Alright, so the other day I was talking with one of my cousins about the difference between empathy and relatability. And our conversation reminded me of this video that I'd seen from a content creator named Noel Miller. And the video was called Are Women Empaths? Now, Noel makes comedy videos. And so this video isn't some kind of deep exploration into whether women are more empathetic than men. Basically, he just got him, one of his friends, and his fiance together to look at some sad videos and see how they reacted. But in no way is this video trying to make any type of statement about empathy or who is more capable of exhibiting it. But if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I think that empathy is just the most important thing. And to prove it, I've already made 2 videos about the concept. And so even though this will be my third, it will most definitely not be my last video about empathy. But so anyway, even though this video really wasn't that deep, I had to go and just think way too much about it and take it to a place that they never even intended for it to go in the first place. But anyway, there's this part in the video where they're watching this clip of this dad who is moving out of his house. And it's really sad because obviously he has kids there and it's their family home. And overall, it's just a very sad video. It's meant to make you feel sad, which again is the point of Noel's entire video. So at the end of it, Noel's fiance says that, yeah, she didn't really feel anything from watching that video. And the reason that she didn't really feel anything is because apparently in her own childhood, she had moved a ton. And so watching somebody get sad because they're moving doesn't really affect her because for her, that's something that she had to do so regularly anyway. And basically she wraps it up by saying, yeah, I can't really relate. And I remember when I was watching this video, after she said that, I immediately started typing on my keyboard. And so I left this comment that said, this was funny, but I think they're misunderstanding what empathy is. It's not about being able to relate. It's about being able to put yourself in those people's/animals' shoes, specifically when you can't relate and still understand what they're going through. Regardless, this was still hilarious.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So again, it's really not that deep, Thief. But I literally couldn't help it. And as you can tell, everybody was probably like, dude, what is this guy talking about? This is just a comedy video. And that's why I only garnered 8 likes. But anyway, this gets to the heart of what I'm trying to talk about today, which is that I think there's this common misconception around empathy that says that in order to empathize with something, you first have to be able to relate to it. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think relatability is some type of prerequisite for empathy. As I said in the comment, I think empathy can happen regardless of whether you can relate to the situation or not. And that misconception, in my opinion, is kind of reflected in some of the comments. One comment reads, the lesson for today was that Noel can only feel empathy for inanimate objects. And another comment reads, I love how neither Alina nor Noel have empathy for humans. Just sad animals or inanimate objects in specific scenarios like leaving your childhood home and go-karts. Now again, these are just funny comments. Nobody's trying to make any type of serious statement here. But I do think that the idea that you can only have empathy for certain situations or certain people or certain things is in and of itself a misconception. I think in this situation, people are referring to sympathy. And the reason I think the two are so often confused for one another is because I think the definitions for each are a little bit loose. So if you Google the definition for sympathy, the first definition reads, feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. Now I personally think that that's one of the best definitions for sympathy, but then definition 2 reads, an understanding between people, common feeling. And unfortunately, I think this definition starts to venture into the realm of empathy, but I'll get to that in a second. Because if you look up the definition for sympathy in Webster's dictionary, you get all of this. I mean, 4 different definitions, each with different definitions within those definitions. I mean, it's just a giant confusing mess. But going back to the first definition we saw, feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune, I do think that this is the best definition for sympathy because this is the one that we use the most colloquially. Whenever we use the word sympathy, I do think that the majority of the time, there is an inherent connotation of feeling sad or sorrowful or pity for the person or situation that we're talking about. I mean, if we plug sympathy back into those comments, they start to make a little bit more sense. The lesson for today was that Noel can only feel sympathy for inanimate objects. Or, I love how neither Alina nor Noel have sympathy for humans, just sad animals or inanimate objects, and etc. and etc. Because again, that's actually what was being tested in the video. Will they start to feel sad because of these sad videos? And going back to what Noel's fiance had said, no, even after seeing that sad video, she couldn't sympathize with the dude because she didn't feel sad. But I think empathy is something different altogether. And I don't think it carries this inherent connotation of feeling sad for whatever is being discussed. I think empathy is purely just understanding why that person felt that way or why they took whatever actions they took. But it doesn't require you to then feel the emotion that the other person was feeling or to agree with whatever action they took. It's purely about the understanding. And again, this is why I say the definitions are a little bit loose, because again, the second definition for sympathy reads understanding between people, common feeling. And if you Google the definition for empathy, it reads the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, which is essentially what the second definition of sympathy is. And if you look up the definition of empathy in Webster's dictionary, it states that empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another of either the past or present without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. And I think that's why there's so much confusion between the two concepts. But personally, I don't believe that empathy requires you to feel the same emotions as that person. And as I always say on this channel, I'm not ever really presenting any new information. Everything that I talk about has already been talked about. I'm just talking about it because I think it's really important. And so even this definition of empathy that I have has already been presented. And so if you look up what the difference is between sympathy and empathy, one of the first results is this article that explains that sympathy involves understanding from your own perspective. Empathy involves putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding why they may have these particular feelings. Also, somewhat bafflingly, if you go to the Webster's dictionary explanation for the difference between sympathy and empathy, it'll reflect this same idea. The difference in meaning is usually explained with some variation of the following. Sympathy is when you share the feelings of another. Empathy is when you understand the feelings of another but do not necessarily share them. Which is interesting because the Webster's definition for empathy states the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, which sounds to me like sharing the feeling, but maybe I'm wrong about that. In any case, it seems that the pretty commonly accepted difference between sympathy and empathy is that when you're talking about sympathy, you're talking about sharing the emotions of the person that you're talking about, whereas empathy is simply about understanding why that person is feeling those emotions. And therefore, by this definition, everybody is capable of having empathy for everything. You may not be able to sympathize with everything, but you can empathize with everything. And that's again why I think empathy is so important. You know, I like to think of empathy as emotional research. You can take a situation even when you don't sympathize or relate to it and understand why the people involved in that situation felt the way that they felt or acted the way that they acted. It's possible for each and every scenario. It's a skill, not something that only some people are capable of and others aren't. Everybody has the capacity to empathize with everything. And just like any skill, some people might have more of an affinity for it, but also just like any other skill, if you don't practice it, you will start to lose the ability to use it. So again, just to recap, I don't think you need to be able to relate to something in order to empathize with it. I think your ability to relate with something will affect your ability to sympathize with it, but not to empathize with it. I think you can empathize with anything and everything, regardless of your ability to relate to it. And so yeah, I think that's gonna be the end of my third video about empathy. And I think it's pretty safe to assume that this is not gonna be the last video that I make on the subject, because clearly, literally anything will trigger me into talking about it. Even a video that really wasn't even trying to say anything about empathy at all. But yeah, like I said, I just think empathy is so important, and I think it needs to be properly understood and defined, even if I don't necessarily have the correct definition of it. And if I don't, I hope that one day I really do understand what empathy is, because again, like I said, I think it's really important. But anyway, I'm probably rambling now, so I'm just gonna end this one here. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with it. I really appreciate you watching. I really hope I didn't just confuse the issue even more, but if I did, I'm sorry. Definitely safer to talk about this with somebody who is way more qualified than I am, like a psychologist or a therapist or really anybody. But in any case, thank you for indulging me. And with that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.